Mage Hunter, my diceless role-playing system, has already launched and is fully funded! That's right, fully funded. What do you get in the Kickstarter? Well, how about some STLs of the unique blood mages that can be found lurking within the pages of Mage Hunter? These unique STLs have been custom designed specifically for the use in Mage Hunter. They are absolutely gorgeous. They come to us from mammothfactorygames.com, making beautiful minis. So what are blood mages? Well, they use the power of the life force inherently held within blood to empower their magic, to double its efficacy, to turn normal spells into terrifying bolts of pure evil. That's also the joy of Mage Hunter, is that you can customize any spell you like. Mage Hunter on Kickstarter now. Oh, it's launching. It's coming. It's diceless. It's role playing. It's my creation. It's Mage Hunter. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of How to Be a Great GM! My name is Guy and I am the very proud creator of Mage Hunter. Mage Hunter is a diceless role-playing system that I created based off of the back of Bounty Hunter, which was a role-playing system that I created a few years ago. Now, Mage Hunter is, for me, one of those systems that you look at and you go, yeah, there's nothing special. I mean, it makes sense, it works, it flows. But why would I use that rather than using something else? The long and short of it is the crux, I should say, of today's video, is looking at role-playing systems and how or why we should use them. It's a very particular topic and one that is so subjective, it's difficult to be objective about it. I don't know why I keep looking over there, by the way. I kind of feel like that's where Mage Hunter is. And yes, I'm going to be talking about Mage Hunter a lot in this video because it's mine. It's my baby. It's going out there and I mean, let's say it's a baby, but it's not. It's colossal. It's a super thick book. Anyway, okay, back to choosing a role-playing system that works for you. I think that as you play with your group, assumedly playing with the same group, but even if you're playing with new groups, you can still always ask your group, hey folks, what kind of games do you like? There are players who are totally focused on mechanics. And for them, that's where you say, okay, cool. This is Dungeons and Dragons. This is the Modiphius games, where mechanics play a very important role in the game. That's not to say that other role-playing systems don't have mechanics. Other role-playing systems have much less mechanical requirements, shall we say, or are simpler or easier to use, because there isn't an overload of intricately interconnected mechanics. This is one of the reasons why games like Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder are so very popular. It's one of the reasons, there are many reasons, but it is because of the ability to be able to link a whole lot of very different elements together to create an immortal super being. I don't care what a lot of people say. Oh, I don't do that. Well, no, but there is a joy of being able to find these little things and connect them together. There is that deep dive that we can get involved in. Now, why would we want that in the first place? To a certain degree, the idea of being able to create these really interesting characters, mechanically speaking, is what sets apart some role-playing systems from others. If the role-playing system is too restrictive and you can't really create the character that you want, that could be a big turn down in terms of, I don't want to play that system. And at the same time, if we have a system that is so open and so expansive that you can create almost anything, well, then sometimes you get a little bit overwhelmed. And that certainly is what happened towards the end of D&D 3.5, was there were so many different classes, there were so many different things and options available to you that it became impossible to track. 5th edition is rapidly getting there as well, where you're like, you're playing a build of the what for the what, and you're actually, what's your basic class? Are you You're a druid? There is so much going on. Nonetheless. So looking at the mechanics, what type of mechanics do your group prefer? Now, if you have players, and I have had these kinds of players who go, what is the D20? And you go, Robert, you have been playing this game for a year and a half, every single Tuesday. Robert, I am telling you right now, there are chimpanzees who understand the concept of a D20. And yet you are a high-powered finance banker. This either sheds light on the banking system or something is very wrong. That came from nowhere. That was totally inspired by my imagination. It had nothing to do with frustration over bankers. Anyway, some players just don't like all of the mechanics. It doesn't mean anything for them. It doesn't really help them very much, and they don't tend to deep dive into the mechanics. I'm one of those players. If the mechanics are so complicated that I have to spend hours on a spreadsheet to work out what my character can do, I'm not interested. And so when I wrote Mage Hunter, that was not part of it. Mage Hunter has structure because we like structure. We don't like to be over-guided or over-taxed, but we also don't like no options or all of the options. So those were things that I took into consideration. The next thing that we look at when we look at why or what role-playing system would be most appropriate for us is, mechanics aside, what are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to do as a game, as a group? Are you trying to play a science fiction game? Are you trying to play a fantasy game? Are you trying to play a murder mystery game? There are lots of systems that are specifically designed for one of those purposes. Most systems are flexible enough that they will allow you to do almost anything, but there are some that are very specifically focused to specific types of games. Call of Cthulhu comes to mind when it's about games that have to deal with the weird extra-dimensional kind of mysteries, investigations, strange phenomenon kind of happening. Of course, there are others that are very open, very much up to choice. Dungeons and Dragons, by the way, I would not say is one of those open systems. Dungeons and Dragons, by its nature, is a combative system. It is designed around the concept of combat and being useful in combat. And I have seen many times, not only as a player, but also as a GM, players who build non-combative characters struggle incredibly during combat because the system is not forgiving. It does not go, oh, you didn't optimize, or oh, you didn't do this, but everybody else in the group did. Yeah, you're going to die unless the GM is really using plot armor to keep you alive. It's just going to happen. When you decide our group is, we're much more focused on combat. Cool. Then go use something like Pathfinder or Dungeons and Dragons. We're more interested in the narrative, in the story. Okay. Well, now let's go and look at some other systems. I would personally say that something like Call of Cthulhu is more narrative focused. Combat is incredibly deadly in that kind of game, and you kind of want to avoid it. Mage Hunter is the same. Mage Hunter has combat, but the combat is very tense, very quick. So you kind of want to avoid it. It's about deciding what works best for your group. Another point that I would say that you need to look at is how creative are your players? So when you have players who like to push the envelope, who go, can I surf on my shield across the wave on the lake to get across the lake? That's pretty creative. Would a metal shield really work? Probably not. The physics involved? Probably not. But is it kind of the game that you're playing? There was a role-playing system, I don't know if it's still in print anymore, called Feng Shui, which was all about being ultra creative. If you tried to run across bullets being fired out of a machine gun at you and you used the bullets as stepping stones, you were far more likely to accomplish that than if you were simply to try and dodge the bullets, because the system rewarded creative play. So when you're looking, think about that. What kind of game do you like to run as a GM? Do you like it when the players are doing crazy kind of antics? Or perhaps you prefer it that there is a rule for everything, and that everything is controlled by tables and lookup tables and references and things along those lines. Perhaps you prefer a more interpretive kind of space. Dungeons and Dragons is certainly very interpretive on a lot of points. Personally, I feel it's kind of a bit of a failing from 3.5, which was very prescriptive, very specific. Dungeons & Dragons is much more hand-washy, especially if you look at their spells. Their spells are incredibly vague. It does a what? But does that... One sentence would have fixed this, and it hasn't. So think about what type of gameplay your players like to engage in. With Mage Hunter, as I'm using it as my example throughout, the entire system is there for the players to go, ooh, I could use that skill or I could use this skill. Which one is going to give me a better outcome? Because I succeed on whichever one I do. The game is based on successes or failures. You simply succeed or you fail. There's no gray area in between, and the players get to choose when they succeed and fail, by the way. So let me just decide. Let me be a bit more flexible. Let me be a bit more creative. So the game enhances that by supporting it with the rule system, but doesn't leave you kind of hanging going, well, I don't know what to do here. At least it shouldn't anyway. The last thing that I look at when I'm trying to choose a system is I look at what is the accessibility of that system. This is the biggest challenge that you're going to face, is if your group has been playing a particular system, let's say, oh, I don't know, the Aliens role-playing system. It's a great system. It's very, very specific. It has very specific outcomes, but it allows for creativity in terms of how the dice pool works. And there are certain things in there that your group has developed a fondness for. But you decide that you actually want to try playing something else. So what's the barrier to entry to getting into a new role-playing system? Well, it's that learning curve, isn't it? And the learning curve, I think, is something that has to be taken into account. And when you look at the learning curve of some games, you go, well, this game is really simple. You're just rolling a d20 and then adding a modifier onto it. Except that in terms of where that modifier comes from, that is oftentimes an intricate web of little contingencies. And so where a simple system seems to be, it's actually much more complicated. Sometimes a complicated system can also be simple once you just look at the underlying mechanics. When you are proposing a new system to your group, you have to be aware that the biggest thing, the biggest pushback, is learning new mechanics. So I would again say, look at your group. If your group loves exploring new mechanics and your first few sessions are all of you looking at the PDFs going, I know you wanted to do this, but let's see if we can find a rule for it. Otherwise, we'll just wing it and then go and try and find the rule later, which is what I would recommend, by the way. You know, if that's what your group likes doing, then that's great. You don't have that barrier to entry. On the other hand, if your group are like,
oh, it's not, can I just roll 3d6? I just want to roll 3d6, okay? Because that's what we did in the last game.
Yes, but this doesn't even use dice.
Well, then what am I rolling?
Nothing. I told you, there are no dice involved in this game. It is a simple yes or no. Do you have the skill or don't you have the skill? Can you spend a point or can't you spend a point? It's as simple as that.
Oh, well, in that case, then I don't roll 3d6.
Well, good, because it wouldn't do anything right. Those are the things that I look at, generally speaking, when I'm trying to decide whether or not I want to use a new system. Now, the big thing that a lot of companies are doing these days is that they are going, oh, no, this role-playing system is for this universe. So we have the superhero Marvel role-playing system, and you go, but I could do superheroes using the Mutants and Masterminds role-playing system, couldn't I? Well, sure. But they don't have the copyright to be able to tell you what Spider-Man statistics are or what the Red Skull statistics are. But the Marvel book does. So it's just a function of me not wanting to spend the time doing conversions. I remember as a lad when I was in school going, oh, I really love this system. I think it was the West End D6 Star Wars system. I loved that system. It was a relatively simple system to get into. The initial mechanics seemed quite complicated, but once you figured it out, everything else was built around that single concept. So it was really elegant from that perspective. I remember taking that going, oh, this is great for Star Wars, but I want to play Star Trek. And let me take the Star Trek and convert it across. There was a Star Trek role-playing system at the time, but it was super complicated. As a matter of fact, it's still considered to be one of the most complicated role-playing systems ever developed by Faster Games. So there is that aspect to it. We might just be buying the system or trying to force a system onto our players that we really don't need to, because it exists already. We just need to transpose it across, spend some time doing some basic conversions. And you don't have to do the conversion in totality before the game starts. Start small. So if you want to play a vampire game, do you really need to use Vampire the Masquerade from White Wolf? Do you want to use that role-playing system and learn all of those things? Or do you just do some modding and use the system that you normally use? That's exactly what I did. We didn't have access to a store to buy those books, but I really wanted to play a vampire game. All I had was D&D 3.5 or modern D20 system. I just adapted the D20 system. And then, of course, they released a book, Urban Arcana, which dealt with a lot of that stuff. I would always urge you, try new systems. Absolutely try new systems. Explore new systems. Do it on your own and then introduce your players. But again, are your players the type that want to explore different systems and look for systems that they want to explore? There's no point in trying to force them to explore something that's mechanically heavy if they're not interested in mechanics, or that is simply theme-based just because you want to play in that theme world. And don't abandon your epic campaign idea because it's, let's say, an extra-dimensional invasion and your players don't want to play Cthulhu. Well, then just do some modding. You're intelligent enough. I know you are because you're a GM. You got this. If you're interested in Mage Hunter, the Kickstarter link is down below. Go check it out. There are some quick start rules that are available to you, so you can kind of have a look at this crazy thing that I have put together. And any support would be more than welcome. As I speak about support, I do have to say a massive thank you to my Patreons who allow me the opportunity to explore and create these amazing things. And to you for watching all the way until the end. Until next time, I wish you and yours the happiest of gaming.